All right, I'm here with Jon Schorle, one of the top refs in the world, and did one of the classic fights, another classic between Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor this last Saturday night on the co-main event of Tyson Paul, and it certainly stole the show as we expected. How you doing, Jon?
Hi, Jeff. Good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, man. So before we get into the fight, for those that don't know you, just give the highlights of your career, how long you've been a referee, how you got into boxing.
Sure. I started refereeing after I got done boxing. I started refereeing in about 1983. And then I was in the amateurs for several years. And then I found Richard Steele in 1990. And he really helped me out and helped me and Mitch out and got our licenses at the same time at the end of 1990. And so I've been working professional boxing basically since then. And also do kickboxing and mixed martial arts. I've done a couple of Floyd Mayweather fights and a couple of Canelo fights. I've done the heavyweight championship, Vitaly Klitschko a couple of times. Been all over the world. So yeah, I've been doing it a long time.
Safe to say you're a seasoned ref. So no better person to put in a big fight like this. Talk about how you got assigned to this fight and when you found out.
Yeah, Greg just called me a few weeks ago. Big Greg Alvarez, he runs combative sports here in Texas. He called me and said, "What are you doing on the 15th?" And I said, "Nothing." And he said, "Okay, I've got a really good fight for you. I'm going to give you this Taylor Serrano fight." And I said, "Oh my God!" I mean, it just couldn't be better. I saw their first fight at least 10 times, and it was just the most brilliant thing I've ever seen. And so I was really excited, but I also knew the big responsibility of it. So I watched it many, many times to see if I could see anything, A few weeks ago, I got it.
So when you watch the fight, Jon, and you prep to do their fight again, are you looking for tendencies as a referee, or are you watching it as a fan? What goes into like prepping for a fight like that?
Well, I rarely watch a fight as a fan anymore. After I saw that fight the first time, a couple of years ago, I had to watch it a couple more times as a fan because it was so entertaining. But then, as soon as Greg gave me the fight, then I started really watching to see what I could see because you've got two very aggressive fighters. One's an orthodox, one's a southpaw, and there's going to be those issues of the front feet and the heads and all that. So yeah, that's exactly what I was watching for. Whatever I could see that I needed to address in the dressing room is what I was looking for.
Interesting. So to that point, obviously you go and meet with both camps, both fighters as they're getting gloved up and give final instructions based on seeing their first fight multiple times and studying it a little bit. Was there any discussion about headbutts, primarily from the Serrano camp, or was there anything about dirty play or anything that came up?
Yeah, they were pretty calm in Katie's dressing room, and we talked all about that stuff. And it's so obvious because they've got these two girls that are, for lack of a better term, alpha males, and they just come in head first. Because they both want it so bad. So I told them they got to watch their heads. But then when I went into Amanda's dressing room, yeah, they addressed it right away, and the trainer was all over it. And so I had to kind of remind him that I was here to talk to her and and all that. Yeah, oh yeah, we talked all about it. You can talk until you're blue in the face, but you never know what's going to happen until it happens.
Right, right. What was the main concern? I mean, obviously headbutts happen, especially between Orthodox and um, Southpaws. But what was the main concern coming from them?
They thought they were sort of accusing Katie of being a dirty fighter. I don't think she's a dirty fighter. I've seen her fight many times. She's just aggressive, and she comes in like a bull. I mean, she's all about taking punches, throwing punches, taking her opponent out, and it's just what happens. But I don't think she's dirty, and so I had to remind them I didn't think she was dirty. That's just what happens.
Right.
The way I saw it.
And then Jon, especially a fight of this magnitude on Netflix worldwide, millions of people watching. the lead in to Tyson Paul, 75,000 plus at AT&T Stadium, recorded as the most viewed fight of all time. Then the fourth round, first it was the slap heard around the world with Tyson and Jake Paul at the weigh-ins, and then it was the headbutt seen around the world. When that happened and you saw that cut, what did you think?
I was looking, that's exactly what I was looking at. I knew it was going to happen. It was just a matter of time. I saw when it happened, and it was an accident. They both came in. It wasn't anybody's fault. It's just the way they lead in with their heads. And I think that's when I called time immediately. I haven't watched the fight since. And I called the doctor in, and it was a bad cut, but it wasn't a stoppable cut, I didn't think, because it was off to the side. And as long as the blood is not going directly in the eye, we can let the fight continue. And so it was off to the side, and it was big, but I wanted to see how she felt, and there was no way she was going to let me stop this fight. I mean, no way she was going to stop the fight. And so I wanted to see how she felt about it. So we let it continue.
Yeah, so I don't remember, because I haven't seen it since. I don't remember if the doctor came over on the first cut, but it looked like a standard cut you see in plenty of fights. But then in the sixth round, I believe there was another headbutt, and you definitely called the doctor over. It started to look grotesque at that point, more than your standard cut. What did the doctor say at that time? Because he's looking at her very closely.
Yeah, he's looking at her, and he asked her, do you want to continue? And you may be right. I can't remember when the doctor. I haven't seen the fight either. I can't remember when I called the doctor in, but he said he was just asking, can you continue? And she's like, yes. And there was no way she was going to just voluntarily stop the fight. And I gave it a good hard look. I've seen some bad cuts in all these years, and it looked like she could continue to me. And so I let it continue, and they duked it out for another 4 rounds.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I was up high in the press box, John. I had a bird's eye view, but I did have the big, massive screen at Jerry World plus TVs. And that cut looked worse than normal. We were somewhat surprised, not so much from you, but that the doctor and the corner let it continue. Were you not surprised then, based on what you saw?
No, I wasn't really, because a fight of this magnitude, I mean, this is probably the greatest female fight in history. I don't know for sure, but I saw the first fight, and there was no way these two wanted a fight to end over a cut. And we talked about it in the dressing room, and we knew it was going to happen, and so it happened, and no, I wasn't surprised.
Well, that was my next question. How much does the magnitude of the fight, and again, with millions of people watching worldwide, how much does that come into play as a referee when you're making those decisions?
That's a good question. Not sure. From my perspective, I'm not sure that it does. I'm really looking out for the fighter's safety, absolutely first. I don't know. It just looked like she could continue to me, and so I let it go on at that point. But I was watching it throughout, and the way they were throwing punches, and I was almost waiting for a big punch, because they were throwing and landing so many punches to really open it up, and it didn't. They were doing a really terrific job in the corner. She'd come out, and the blood would have been stopped, and they only have a minute to work on it, so they were doing a terrific job in the corner. But I was watching it really closely.
Let me ask you, John, and for the fans out there, and first off, let me say thank you for doing this interview. We've known each other for many years. For the record, Richard Steele got both of us into this crazy professional game. But we've never done a formal interview, and so I appreciate you doing this with me.
You bet.
But for the fans out there, who has the ultimate authority to stop the fight? Is it you, the doctor, the corner? Like, what does that kind of ranking look like?
Yeah, it's the referee. If you listen to the rules at the beginning it'll say no standing 8 count, no 3 knockdown rule. Fighter can only be saved by the bell, or can't be saved by the bell in any round. and only the referee can stop the contest. And so we can take a suggestion from the doctor, but it's our ultimate authority. In fact, the corner can't even stop the fight. If the corner were to say, "We're done, stop the fight," and the referee didn't feel, and I wouldn't do it most of the time, but if they say stop the fight, we don't have to stop the fight because it's our ultimate authority. And it goes back to the old gambling days in the 40s and 50s when a corner would they'd bet on their own fight that it would be stopped before the fifth round, and they would throw the towel in and they'd win the bet. And so that's when they started using the referee. No, only the referee can stop it. So the referee has the ultimate authority, really. Yeah.
But to your point, 9 out of 10 times, you're usually taking the advice of the doctor. If the towel gets thrown in,
Yes.
it's probably a good indication you're going to stop it.
Yeah. If the corner wants to stop it, see, they know their fighter better than I do, and they know what happened in sparring in preparation for their fight. If their fighter got knocked out the week before, I wouldn't know that, and nobody else. They're not going to admit that, and so nobody would know that. So if they feel like their fighter has had enough, then basically 10 times out of 10, I go with them. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So afterwards, obviously the emotions were high in the ring. And I'll ask you about another fight in a minute, but did Amanda's corner, I think he was not happy. Obviously, Jordan Maldonado talking about Katie being dirty and this and that. Did anyone say anything to you in the ring after the fight?
Nobody said anything, and she was very gracious in defeat. I mean, these are class girls and very intelligent, smart girls. She was very gracious. She was very disappointed, but she was very gracious. He didn't say anything to me. I mean, he was like that when I went into the dressing room, so he was kind of amped up anyway. Not to say anything bad about the guy. He's a professional. He's obviously a very smart guy. It's his business. He has to stick up for his fighter, and that's all he was doing that I could see. But nobody said a thing to me, no.
You know, John, many years ago, the referee used to also be a judge in the fight. How glad were you that that's not the case anymore? And could you have really judged this fight?
Another good question, Jeff. You're just right on time. That's so funny that you say that because right before I called him to the center of the ring for the decision, I don't know what the decision is. I'm not paying attention to it. I thought to myself, wow, I'm glad I wasn't a judge on this fight. And then the announcer came over and he told me, and I thought, wow, okay. And he said unanimous. And I thought, wow, okay, well, they obviously saw something. And so then, I announced the winner and that was that. But they had the exact same score, that's good judging to me.
Yeah, I haven't analyzed the scorecards. That was surprising to see the same scores, but I was wondering if it was over the same rounds too, because you can win the lotto with that never happens.
No question about it. And that's another good point. Did they agree on all the rounds? I've seen that a number of times where I had the same score as a judge with somebody else, but we differed on maybe 2 rounds out of a 12-round fight. So yeah, no, I haven't seen that either. And so that's another good question. If they agreed on all the rounds, that's pretty much, it's pretty much how the fight really went. If 3 judges saw it the same, kind of hard to argue with that.
So you weren't surprised by, 95-94, you can't get any closer than that. Then you weren't surprised, though, that Taylor got her hand raised.
No, I just didn't know. I really thought it could have gone either way. It wouldn't have surprised me if Amanda's hand was. It wouldn't have surprised me. I really did until the announcer told me. I didn't know. I really didn't know. But the first fight was a split decision.
Right.
So 95-94, that's a close fight.
Yeah. I know, I was in the press box though, but the fans, I guess, weren't happy with the decision. When you're in a big arena and 75,000 fans weren't too happy. There's a lot of chatter online. Some people think Amanda got robbed and so forth. But I've also seen people for Katie as well. So it's a mixed bag, but it seems like the word robbery seems to get overused in boxing. This was by no means a robbery, though.
No, no, no. Right. It was a super, super close fight. That's how I saw it as the referee. I wasn't a judge. I wasn't tallying a score. So no, it was close.
So, and John, I appreciate again doing this. I'll let you go. I know you're out enjoying the outdoors on your ranch.
Yeah.
But I mentioned our mentor, Hall of Fame ref Richard Steele, who arguably had the most controversial fight of all time. There's no denying Meldrick-Taylor, Julio Cesar Chavez. Every March when that fight comes around, it's debated. It'll be debated to the end of time. And Richard, as you know, his sense of humor, he'll tell you he'll never lay foot in Philly again because they'll want to take his head off. But he's a national hero in Mexico with old ladies throwing him gifts, from
Yeah.
the second story. But when you think about your career, and Richard has stood by his decision to this day, and I think over time it's actually gone more in his favor. He was crucified, after that fight initially by many folks, before fights getting announced and so forth. But how much did you learn from Richard and seeing how he's made decisions and how he's worked fights of that stature?
Everything, everything. Richard is everything to me. Richard is everything to me. I was an amateur referee for several years, and I just wasn't learning what I thought I needed to learn. Then I met him, and I learned more spending in a week with him in Vegas than I did the previous 6 years. I came back after that, after 1 week with Richard. I worked an amateur show, and the people I worked with all the time in the amateurs, they said, "What are you doing different? You've been practicing or something?" I mean, I was just working with him 2 weeks before, and I said, "I just spent a week with Richard Steele in Vegas," and they said, "Really?" I mean, it was that dramatic. And he's just been a friend to me. I was telling my wife this not too long ago that Richard Steele is the only person. I mean, I'll argue with my wife. We get along very, very well, or my kids or my parents, whatever. The one person I wouldn't ever argue with is Richard Steele because he's always right. In my eyes, he's always right. He's never told me anything that was wrong. And that Meldrick-Taylor fight and Chavez, it was the greatest fight in my mind of all time. It was a shame it ended kind of the way it did, but Richard was right. That's sorry. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, and Richard has said over the years, it doesn't matter if there's 2 seconds into a fight or 2 seconds left in a fight. When a fighter is done, he's done. And
Right.
if he goes the other way, he's cheating for the other guy. I listened to a podcast with Mario Lopez and Steve Kim, two boxing aficionados. And the 3 knockdown rule, I'll plug it. It's a great podcast. And they debate this fight all the time. Obviously, Mario thinks it was the greatest decision of all time, and Steve Kim thinks it's the worst decision of all time. But Richard said, "I'm not calling balls and strikes," and he like I said, stands by the decision. Even Tony Weeks, who we know, said it was the best decision of all time. It wasn't
Right.
the worst decision of all time.
Right. No, every time I see it, I think, wow, what a hero. I mean, that's a lot of huevos, what they say, to stop that fight. But Richard was right, and I've argued that. I won't even argue it anymore. He was right. There's no point in arguing it. He was right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, John, anything else? I know you don't do a lot of interviews, and I don't know
No.
if I've ever seen you do interviews, which is understandable. But I definitely wanted to get your take and for the world out there to kind of see it from your perspective, and what you learned and what you heard and everything in between. But real quick though, just the massive fight being in Texas, Cowboy Stadium, Netflix, Tyson, Paul, just talk about the whole experience and just being a part of it.
Oh God, it was so amazing. I had my family there. I had to buy them seats and I got them in the nosebleed seats, but had all four my family members. It was the whole production was absolutely beautiful. Netflix did such a superb job, the way they set everything up. And that was the most modern ring. And I've been in rings all over the world. That was the most modern, beautiful ring and solid as a rock ring I've ever been in. Oh, it just couldn't have been better. And the way Greg runs it, Greg Alvarez, Combative Sports, he's such a good boss, and it was just run so well.
We had a great team of officials. The crowd was absolutely amazing. And these girls, I have to go back to these girls, Serrano and Katie Taylor. Oh my God. They were so good and so gracious, both of them. It was the top 3 fights of my whole career. It's in the top 3 in my mind.
And maybe we'll see it one more time for a trilogy.
Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. The one person I wish was here just to witness it was old Uncle Dickie, Dickie Cole.
Yeah.
He would have loved being in this environment with Mike and Jake and the whole 9. But
Yeah. Miss Dickie. Yeah.
yeah. But listen,
And
John,
you're the only guy. You're the only guy I do interviews with, by the way. Everybody else minces my words, and so you're the most honest guy out there, I think. So that's why I did this.
well, I appreciate it, man. I know you've been getting blown up, and I appreciate it. And enjoy the rest of the Sunday. And we'll talk. I'll see you at the fight soon.
Thanks, Jeff. Good to talk to you.
You too. Thanks, John.
Okay. Okay. Bye bye.